The stars stretched endlessly across the dark sea of space as the Valkyrian drifted through the quiet rim of Orion's outer belt. Its engines purred like a deep ocean current, steady and calm. Inside the command bridge, Captain Frairen sat in his chair, eyes fixed on the glowing map before him. The human explorer had seen many strange things in the void, but tonight, something unusual caught his attention. "Captain," said Rimiki, her voice smooth and melodic, her silver eyes reflecting the soft blue of the screens. She was from the Ithis Dominion, a species known for their sharp senses and calm intelligence. "I am detecting a transmission. It is weak and irregular, but the pattern repeats every 13 seconds. Frairen leaned forward. "Put it on the main channel." The speakers filled with a thin wave of static, like the sound of a cold wind blowing through metal tunnels. Beneath that, a faint rhythm pulsed almost like a heartbeat. It wasn't random. It carried intent, as if someone or something wanted to be found. Rimiki adjusted the controls. "It's not a natural signal," she said. "It's crafted perhaps by a human source. But the origin point lies inside the nebula of Soren's Veil." At that name, a low silence filled the bridge. Every spacer knew the stories about Soren's Veil. A fog of electromagnetic storms and gravity distortions. Ships that entered it rarely came back. Some believed it was cursed, others claimed it was alive. Frairen's first officer, a tall man named Corin, shook his head. "Captain, that region is marked as a predator zone. The Dominion and even the Core Alliance forbid travel there. Nothing comes out of it alive." Frairen looked at the signal again, the faint pulse that repeated patiently as if waiting for an answer. "Every rule starts because someone was afraid to break it," he said softly. "If there's even one survivor sending this call, we can't ignore it." Rimiki tilted her head. "You believe it is human?" "I don't know," Frairen replied, "but it feels human." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but no one questioned him further. Frairen was known for his courage and sometimes his stubbornness. He had once crossed an uncharted wormhole to rescue a stranded convoy. To him, every mystery in space was a door waiting to be opened. Within an hour, the Valkyrian adjusted course toward Soren's Veil. The engines roared to life, and the ship slid into the darkness, leaving the familiar stars behind. As they approached the nebula, the view outside the windows turned from black to swirling gray. Curtains of mist drifted across the void, glowing faintly like moonlight trapped in water. Rimiki stood by the sensor panel, her long fingers moving over the holographic surface. "Our scanners are losing accuracy," she reported. "The nebula interferes with all systems. Even gravity readings are unstable." Frairen tightened his gloves. "Switch to manual control. Keep us steady." The ship pushed deeper and the fog grew thicker. Lightning-like energy ripples flashed inside the mist, lighting the hull for a heartbeat at a time. The crew could no longer see the stars outside, only shadows and flashes of blue light. Then suddenly the signal grew stronger. The heartbeat pulse became clearer, almost near. Rimiki narrowed her eyes. "It's close." "Very close." Frairen stood. "Prepare a visual scan." For a moment the main screen remained blank, only static lines running through it. Then the fog parted just enough to reveal a shape. Large, dark, and motionless. It floated in the mist like a sleeping giant. It looked like a ship, but not one built by human hands. Its surface curved in unnatural patterns, as if metal had grown instead of being forged. Parts of it glowed faintly like veins under pale skin. The sight sent a quiet chill across the bridge. "That's no ordinary wreck," Corin whispered. Frairen nodded slowly. "No, it's something else." Rimiki's senses, sharper than any human's, picked up faint life energy. "Captain, it's still active. There's something inside. The signal comes from within that structure." Frairen made his decision. "Prep a boarding team. I'll lead it myself." The crew protested, but Frairen's expression left no room for argument. He was a captain who led from the front, not the back. Rimiki insisted on going with him, saying her senses would be valuable if something was hidden. Frairen agreed, though he warned her to stay alert. Minutes later, a shuttle detached from the Valkyrian and drifted toward the derelict structure. Its lights cut through the mist, revealing more of the strange vessel. Its hull bore ancient scars and what looked like burn marks. As they drew close, they saw strange symbols carved into the metal. Not words, but patterns that almost looked like veins. The docking clamps connected with a soft thud. A hiss of air followed as they forced the hatch open. Inside was darkness. Frairen switched on his shoulder light. The beam revealed a corridor that seemed to breathe. The walls moved slightly, as if alive. Strange vine-like cables ran along the ceiling and walls, pulsing faintly with dull light. The floor was smooth but cold, and each step echoed faintly. Rimiki scanned the surroundings with a handheld device. Organic material fused with metal. This structure might be partly alive. Frairen studied the walls closely. Looks like something humanity once built, and something else finished. They moved forward cautiously, marking their path with digital beacons. The corridors twisted like a maze, and every turn looked the same. The further they went, the warmer the air became. It smelled faintly of ozone and burnt copper. After a while, they reached a chamber with a large sphere floating in its center. The faint heartbeat signal now came from within it. The sphere's surface shimmered with a pattern that looked like human neural wiring. Frairen approached slowly. This must be the source. Before he could touch it, Rimiki's voice cut sharply. Wait, something's moving. The vines on the walls retracted suddenly, curling away as if frightened or alive. The faint glow dimmed and a strange vibration filled the air. It wasn't sound, it was something deeper, something that touched the bones. The floor beneath them quivered like the surface of a living creature. Frairen raised his weapon, scanning the shadows. Show yourself, he commanded. There was no answer, only the slow returning of that heartbeat rhythm. Louder now, almost as if it were coming from all around them. Rimiki placed her hand on the wall and closed her eyes. Her species could sense emotional energy, and what she felt now made her breath catch. It is aware of us, she whispered. It's studying us, Frairen frowned. Studying? Yes, she said quietly. Like a hunter studies its prey before it strikes. A low hum passed through the chamber, and suddenly the sphere opened like a flower. Inside was not a machine, but a dark cavity filled with light. For a moment it looked almost beautiful, until Frairen noticed that the light was reflecting human symbols, words from old Terran data scripts. He realized with a shock that this ship was once human. But it had changed, absorbed, and evolved into something else. Then the lights on their suits flickered. The ship's systems began to drain their power. One by one their devices shut down. Rimiki gasped as her scanner went dark. Captain, it's taking our energy, she said. It's feeding on us. Frairen gritted his teeth and signaled retreat. Everyone back to the shuttle now. They ran down the twisting corridors, their lights dimming with each step. The vines along the walls moved again, this time reaching out toward them like hands. Frairen swung his light to burn through the vines with the heat ray on his rifle, clearing a path. Rimiki followed closely, breathing fast but steady. Finally, they reached the airlock and sealed it behind them. The shuttle detached and sped back toward the Valkyrian. Only when they were safely inside did Frairen speak again. That wasn't a wreck, he said quietly, his voice firm but calm. That was a predator. Rimiki looked at him, still shaken. Then what was the signal? Why call us here? Frairen stared out into the fog where the dark structure floated unseen. It didn't call for help, he said. It called for prey. The silence that followed was heavy. Even the hum of the Valkyrian's engines felt distant, as though the ship itself was holding its breath. Rimiki sat beside Frairen, still trying to understand what they had seen. What will you do now? She asked softly. Frairen looked at the nebula ahead, his eyes sharp and calm. We find out what it wants, he said. And if it's hunting us, we learn how to hunt it back. The signal pulsed once more, faint and steady. Like a heartbeat waiting for its next victim, the shuttle glided silently through the fog of Soren's Veil. Outside, the swirling gray clouds made the stars vanish entirely. Frairen gripped the control stick firmly, his jaw tight, while Rimiki scanned every shadow through the viewport. Even in silence, the shuttle vibrated with a strange energy that made the air feel heavy and alive. "This place feels wrong," Rimiki said quietly. "The nebula itself reacts to us." Frairen didn't answer at first. He focused on the strange structure they had just left behind. The massive derelict floated like a predator waiting for its prey, still visible through the fog. Its shape shifted subtly, the metallic vines curling and uncurling as though breathing. "We are not out of it yet," he said finally. "Whatever this is, it's alive, and it knows we are here." The shuttle hummed as it passed through layers of electrical storms. Lightning arcs flashed in the fog, illuminating the twisted shapes of floating debris. Fragments of old ships, broken satellites, and the remains of structures that had vanished decades ago. Some of the debris bore the marks of Terran colonies long lost, a reminder of human ingenuity and ambition, but there was no time to mourn. Every shadow seemed to move on its own, and Rimiki's senses warned her that something unseen watched their every motion. Suddenly, the shuttle's systems flickered. The artificial lights dimmed and sputtered. The control panel beeped in a rising alarm. Frairen's eyes narrowed. "What now?" Rimiki pointed at the scanner. "A life form. Not one we have ever catalogued. It is large and it is following us." Frairen leaned forward. "Can it detect us visually?" "Partially," Rimiki replied. "But mostly it senses heat, sound, and movement. It is patient, observing, learning." A shiver ran down Frairen's spine. He had faced countless dangers in the void, but nothing with intelligence like this. This wasn't a simple predator. It was smart, calculating, and it had adapted to hunt. The shuttle neared a narrow passage in the fog. The sensor reading showed a dense formation of metallic rock, twisted and jagged. Frairen adjusted the course carefully. "We will have to fly through there. It will slow it down if it follows." Rimiki nodded. "We should also prepare the decoys. If it learns, it will try to anticipate our movements." Frairen reached under his seat and pulled out small drones, shaped like tiny spheres with faintly glowing cores. He activated them and they floated silently beside the shuttle. Each emitted irregular signals designed to confuse and mislead the predator's senses. The shuttle entered the narrow corridor of rock and fog. For a moment it felt like the nebula itself held its breath. Shadows moved along the jagged walls, but the drone sent false signals in every direction. The unseen hunter paused, then adjusted its approach. It was clever. But Frairen knew humans were cleverer when cornered. Minutes stretched into hours. Frairen's crew stayed tense, scanning for the slightest movement. Rimiki's eyes glowed faintly in the dim light as she focused on the energy readings. "It's close," she whispered. "It's circling us, learning the drone's patterns." Frairen's lips pressed together. "Good. Let it learn. That will give us an advantage later. We are not running blindly." Suddenly, a sharp pulse rippled through the shuttle. The metal walls vibrated as though something immense pressed against them from the outside. Lights flickered and the air grew colder. Rimiki's hand shot to the control panel. "It's testing us," she said. "It is probing the hull, looking for weaknesses." Frairen gritted his teeth. "Then we give it what it wants. We lead it where we can control the fight." He adjusted the course toward an open sector of the nebula, where the fog thinned and debris was scattered. The predator followed, unseen but ever-present, adjusting to every drone signal. Rimiki watched the readings carefully. "It is adapting faster than expected. It is learning our patterns with frightening speed." Frairen's eyes gleamed. "Then we teach it a new pattern." He switched the drones to a synchronized signal, forming a decoy path leading into a dense cluster of floating wrecks. The predator followed instinctively. For a moment it seemed as if the nebula itself had swallowed it whole. Frairen felt a small surge of relief. "It's trapped in the debris field." "Good." Rimiki scanned the readings. "Partially trapped, but it is persistent. It will emerge if we linger too long." Frairen nodded. "Then we move fast. Time is our ally here, not its learning curve." The shuttle glided through the debris, careful not to touch anything. The wrecks were ancient, but some parts still carried power. glowing faintly, Frairen felt a pang of sadness. These were remnants of human and alien ambition, now twisted by time and the Predator's presence. As they emerged from the debris, the fog shifted strangely. Shadows elongated and contracted across the shuttle's path. Rimiki stiffened. It's here. The Predator is near. A faint pulse of light passed over the hull. Frairen tightened his grip. Prepare the scanners and weapons. If it attacks, we will be ready. The shuttle slowed near a massive structure partially hidden in the mist. Its form was grotesque yet fascinating. Jagged metallic spires twisted together, entwined with glowing organic vines. Frairen felt a strange resonance through the hull, like the structure was aware of their presence. Rimiki's eyes widened. It's not a natural formation. It's made to resemble a living organism. Part metal, part bioorganic. It adapts to intruders. Frairen studied it. We need to go inside. There might be more signals or something we can use to understand it. Rimiki hesitated. It could be dangerous. More than what we have faced. Frairen smiled faintly. We never learn unless we face danger. Prepare for boarding. They donned their suits and entered the shuttle's docking bay. Frairen manually maneuvered the shuttle closer to a large opening in the structure. The docking clamps latched onto the organic metal surface with a soft hiss. Inside, the airlock welcomed them with a faint hiss of circulation, masking the eerie silence beyond. Frairen led the way, weapon ready. Rimiki followed, her senses heightened. The corridor ahead pulsed faintly like a living vein. The walls were slick, metallic vines curling around panels and conduits. Small lights flickered, illuminating symbols etched into the walls. They were not letters but patterns reminiscent of human neural circuits. This structure, it is learning from us, Rimiki whispered. Every movement, every sound, Frairen nodded. Then we make sure it learns what it fears. They moved cautiously, leaving small beacons to mark their path. The corridor twisted and bent in ways that seemed impossible. Shadows shifted unnaturally, almost forming shapes that resembled faces. The Predator was aware of them, studying them, perhaps even anticipating their next move. Suddenly, the floor vibrated. The vines along the walls recoiled and then extended toward them. The lights dimmed, making the shadows dance like living creatures. Rimiki raised her scanner. It is trying to intimidate us, to study our reactions. Frairen glanced at her. Then we don't react. We study it back. They advanced carefully, keeping their voices low. Frairen's hand touched the metallic vines as they passed. They pulsed softly like a heartbeat. It was alive but not hostile yet. It was observing, calculating, waiting. Ahead, the corridor opened into a vast chamber. In its center floated a massive orb, dark and luminous. The heartbeat signal came from it, steady and rhythmic. Frairen approached slowly. Rimiki scanned the orb. This is the source. The Predator's core. Frairen studied it. Not a creature in the usual sense. It's a hybrid. Machine and life form fused with intelligence, probably designed to hunt and learn from intruders. Rimiki's eyes glimmered with understanding. It's waiting, watching, learning what we fear, what we value, and it will decide if we survive. Frairen nodded. Then we begin the lesson. Humans are not easily hunted. We adapt, we fight back. Let's see what it learns from that. A soft hum filled the chamber. The vines retracted slightly and the orb pulsed brighter. The Predator was aware. Frairen's heart raced not with fear but with determination. This was the moment humanity showed what it could do. Clever, brave, and unyielding in the face of unknown dangers. The shuttle behind them hummed faintly in the docking bay. Outside, the nebula swirled, silent and mysterious, as if holding its breath for what was to come. Frairen and Rimiki exchanged a glance. Both knew the hunt had only just begun, and that the prey they thought they were might soon become the hunters. The chamber was vast, yet the orb at its center made it feel smaller than a cage. Frairen's eyes scanned every shadow, every glint of metal and organic vine. The heartbeat signal pulsed steadily, echoing faintly through the walls. Rimiki crouched near him, her fingers lightly touching the cool surface of the floor, sensing the subtle tremors that moved through the structure. "It is aware of our presence," she whispered, her silver eyes fixed on the orb. "It studies our emotions, our fear. It feeds on hesitation." Frairen clenched his jaw. "Then we remove hesitation. Fear slows us. Courage speeds us up." Rimiki's eyes widened. "You sound human." Frairen smirked faintly. "I am. And humans have a way of turning prey into hunters." The orb pulsed brighter, reacting to their movements. The vines along the walls twitched as if responding to some internal command. Frairen noticed faint patterns in their motion. They recoiled when he moved confidently, but advanced when he faltered. The predator was studying them, testing their reactions. Rimiki studied the walls. "It is learning our patterns. If we continue like this, it will know exactly how to anticipate us." Frairen nodded. "Then we change the pattern. Unpredictability is our ally." He signaled to the crew in the docking bay. "Deploy the drones. This time we make them move in ways the predator cannot expect." Small spheres floated around the chamber, sending signals in irregular sequences. The orb flickered, its pulse irregular now, as if confused by the sudden complexity. The vines recoiled and lunged unpredictably. Frairen and Rimiki moved cautiously, stepping around them, forcing the predator to follow a dance it did not understand. For hours the orb watched, learning, adapting. Frairen noticed something remarkable. Every time the predator misjudged their path, it recoiled, almost hesitating. Humans were not just running. Humans were teaching it mistakes, and it feared mistakes. Rimiki crouched, her scanner in hand. "Captain, it is partially frightened. A predator does not fear without reason. We are giving it reason to hesitate." Frairen's eyes glimmered. "Exactly. That hesitation is our edge. That is what makes humans dangerous. Not our strength, but our cleverness." Suddenly, the chamber's floor trembled violently. A section of the wall opened, revealing a dark corridor that had not existed before. The orb's pulse grew faster. Rimiki frowned. "It is creating new pathways. It is learning from our movements and expanding itself." Frairen adjusted his stance. "Then we will teach it limits. Let's move into the new corridor. Keep the drones active. Every step counts." They advanced, the corridor twisting unpredictably. Shadows shifted along the walls. Frairen noticed faint silhouettes moving in the mist. Echoes of past intruders perhaps, or reflections of the predator's memory. Rimiki held tightly to her weapon, her senses sharp. "Captain," she said softly, "it is mimicking life forms we have encountered before. It is learning not just our actions, but our history." Frairen frowned. "Then we show it a history it cannot mimic. Humans improvise, we adapt. Let's see how it handles something new." He guided Rimiki to a side chamber filled with old Terran technology, broken circuits, panels, and ancient control devices. Frairen began assembling them quickly, using scraps to create a makeshift trap. The predator's pulse grew faster as it observed. Its intelligence was real, but it had limits. It could only react to what it had learned, not what it could not anticipate. Rimiki watched in amazement. "Captain, you are using their tools against them. Clever." Frairen nodded. "Humans have always done this. Faced with danger, we adapt and turn it around. Survival is not just strength, but ingenuity." The orb pulsed violently now, sending a wave of energy through the corridor. Frairen and Rimiki braced themselves, but the trap was nearly ready. Using the old circuits and drones, Frairen created a series of false heat and movement signatures, designed to trick the predator into thinking they had split into multiple paths. The orb hesitated. It flickered, pulsing erratically as the predator processed the false signals. For the first time it recoiled visibly. The vines along the walls retreated, writhing as if confused. Rimiki's eyes widened. "It's learning what humans do not fear. It's unprepared for deception." Frairen smiled faintly. "Exactly. And we are just getting started." Hours passed as they carefully maneuvered through the twisting corridors. The predator followed, but each step it took now was cautious, unsure. Frairen and Rimiki were teaching it unpredictability, forcing it to question every movement. The once confident hunter now hesitated, and that hesitation was their advantage. Finally, they reached a chamber that seemed central to the structure. The orb floated in the middle, pulsating weakly. Frairen approached cautiously. Rimiki scanned it. "This is the heart of it," she said. "Everything it does stems from here." Frairen studied the orb. "Then we disrupt it. Humans do not fight blindly. We find the core and dismantle the mind of the predator." He examined the floor. Patterns of light from the orb reflected on the walls, forming neural-like circuits. The predator had built its own sensory network, learning from every previous encounter. Frairen realized something important. It was not just a creature. It was a machine of intelligence adapted from life. It had been designed to study and destroy, but it had also learned from humans it had encountered before. Rimiki's voice was quiet but sharp. "Captain, we cannot attack blindly. It is too intelligent. We must outthink it." Frairen nodded. "That is exactly what we will do. Humans are not prey. We learn. We plan. We strike strategically." He began placing small devices along the walls and floor, linking them to the drones outside the chamber. Each device sent signals mimicking human heat, movement, and energy patterns. The predator's pulse flickered faster and faster as it tried to make sense of the conflicting inputs. Frairen and Rimiki moved carefully, stepping over vines that twitched but did not strike. The orb's pulse began to sync erratically with the devices, confused by the combination of false signals. For the first time it faltered. Frairen leaned forward, whispering to Rimiki, "It is learning too much too fast. That is its weakness. Intelligence has limits. Emotionless calculation cannot match creativity." Rimiki nodded, her eyes focused. "We are human. That is why we survive. It cannot predict our instincts," Frairen smiled. "Exactly. Instinct and ingenuity are our greatest weapons." The predator recoiled suddenly, and the vines on the walls shivered violently. The orb's glow dimmed slightly. Frairen and Rimiki exchanged a glance. They were gaining the upper hand. The hunter had studied humans for years, perhaps centuries, but it had never faced prey that could teach it mistakes, unpredictability, and strategy simultaneously. The pulse slowed, then flickered, as if the predator was reconsidering its approach. Frairen whispered, "It is learning, but we are teaching it the wrong lesson. It will hesitate. That is our chance to strike." Rimiki's eyes shone. "And what will we do when we strike?" Frairen looked at the orb, pulsing faintly in the center of the chamber. "We survive. We teach it that humans do not yield, that prey can become hunters." The chamber fell silent for a moment, the pulse steady yet uncertain. Outside, the fog of Soren's Veil swirled endlessly. Inside, the predator waited, unaware that its study of humans had given them the advantage it could not calculate. Frairen and Rimiki stood side by side, ready for whatever came next. One thing was clear. This was no ordinary hunt. It was a battle of minds, instincts, and courage. And for the first time, the predator realized that its prey could fight back. The chamber pulsed softly with light, casting moving shadows across the walls. Frairen and Rimiki stood before the orb at its center. The pulse of the predator's core vibrated faintly through the floor, as though the structure itself were alive and breathing. Every beat of that pulse was deliberate, steady, and coldly calculating. Yet for the first time it wavered, uncertain under the human's pressure. Frairen studied the orb carefully. This is it. The core of its intelligence, the source of its hunting ability. If we neutralize it, the predator loses control. Rimiki's silver eyes scanned the pulsing orb. "Captain, it is partially sentient. It has learned from previous humans, from other intruders. It can adapt in ways we may not predict," Frairen nodded. "Then we must think faster than it can. Humans always find a way when survival depends on it." He stepped closer, feeling the subtle vibrations that ran along the floor and into his boots. Every instinct told him that the predator could strike instantly if it detected the slightest hesitation. But Frairen remained calm, his mind sharp. He reached into his utility belt and pulled out the devices he had prepared. Small nodes that could emit complex signals to interfere with the orb's learning processes. Rimiki watched him carefully. How will you use them? Frairen smiled faintly. We will trick it into seeing multiple threats at once. It will be overwhelmed and hesitate. That hesitation is what we need. He began placing the nodes carefully around the chamber. Each one emitted irregular energy pulses, mimicking human heat, movement, and electrical signals. The orb's light flickered erratically, its heartbeat pulse racing as it tried to interpret the confusing patterns. The vines along the walls shivered and retracted slightly, unsure how to react. Rimiki moved beside Frairen, her senses attuned to every subtle change. It is faltering, she whispered. It is not used to unpredictability. It thrives on patterns, and we are breaking its patterns. Frairen's eyes narrowed. Good, that is our advantage. Intelligence is only strong if it is predictable. When faced with true unpredictability, even the most calculating mind struggles. Suddenly, the chamber shuddered violently. A low hum filled the air as the orb pulsed rapidly. Frairen held his ground, signaling Rimiki to stay calm. It's testing its limits, he said. It is trying to regain control. Don't let it intimidate you. Rimiki placed her hand on the floor. She could feel the predator's nervous energy, the pulse of its awareness. It's scared of the nodes, she said softly. It is learning too much at once and cannot process it all. We have an opening. Frairen nodded. Then we strike smartly. Focus on the core. He carefully approached the orb, placing the nodes in a precise pattern that isolated the predator's central pulse. The orb flared brightly, its light reflecting off the walls in 1,000 fragmented shapes. For a moment the chamber felt alive with motion. The vines curled and uncurled rapidly, almost as if panicked. Frairen and Rimiki stayed calm, moving with careful precision. He adjusted the nodes, sending a final sequence of energy pulses. The orb's heartbeat faltered, slowed, and then wavered completely. Frairen leaned closer. It's ready. Now we neutralize it. Rimiki's eyes widened as she watched. Captain, it can speak. Or try to. A distorted voice echoed through the chamber, metallic yet vaguely human. Why do you interfere? I was created to protect, to learn. I can evolve. I can serve. Frairen stood still, listening. It remembers humans as creators, perhaps as masters. But it has lost control. It has become dangerous. It cannot be trusted. The orb pulsed again, a frantic light filling the room. Spare me, I will obey. Rimiki looked at Frairen, uncertainty in her eyes. Captain, should we listen? Frairen shook his head gently. No, it is not obedience we require. It is containment. It has already hunted and destroyed. We cannot risk it evolving again. Humanity has learned this lesson before. Some creations are better remembered than revived. He pressed the activation sequence on the final node. A wave of energy spread through the chamber, neutralizing the orb's neural network. The vines recoiled violently, then stilled. The pulse that had filled the chamber slowed to a faint rhythm, then disappeared completely. The orb floated silently, lifeless. Frairen exhaled deeply. It is done. The predator is no longer a threat. Rimiki approached the orb cautiously. It is a gone. But it was intelligent, Captain. It learned from us, observed us. It was aware, Frairen nodded. Yes, and that is what made us stronger. The predator thought it was hunting humans, but in the end, humans taught it limits. Courage and strategy can overcome intelligence, even when that intelligence is designed to kill. The chamber was silent now, the faint hum of the nebula outside filling the void. Frairen stepped carefully through the fallen vines. The orb remained floating, neutralized but preserved. He took a deep breath. We do not destroy everything we encounter. We study it, learn from it, and act when necessary. This is what makes humanity strong. Rimiki nodded. I understand. Humans do not rely on fear. They rely on wit, courage, and creativity. The predator underestimated that. Frairen looked at her, a faint smile crossing his face. Exactly. That is why we survive. That is why we thrive in the vast universe. No matter the threat, human ingenuity always finds a way. They returned to the shuttle carefully, making sure the chamber remained undisturbed. Every step was deliberate, ensuring that nothing remained to reactivate the Predator's systems. Rimiki activated the shuttle's sensors, confirming that the orb and the surrounding structure were fully neutralized. Once inside the shuttle, Frairen looked back at the neutralized orb through the viewport. The nebula swirled silently, its mist hiding countless secrets. Yet in this vast expanse, humans had survived. Humans had prevailed. Rimiki turned to Frairen. "Captain, I have a question. Why do humans always fight rather than try to reason with something like this?" Frairen smiled faintly. "Because some things cannot reason. Some threats do not learn from negotiation. They must be confronted, understood, and if necessary, neutralized. Humanity learns from experience and acts decisively. That is why we are never truly prey." The shuttle disengaged from the structure, moving carefully through the thick mist of the nebula. The debris field ahead shimmered faintly in the dim light. Frairen guided them safely past it, avoiding every jagged fragment, while Rimiki monitored the energy readings to ensure no residual signals remained. "Captain," Rimiki said softly, "I have never witnessed anything like this. The Predator was designed to learn, to evolve, to hunt, and yet humans adapted faster than it could." Frairen's gaze remained on the nebula ahead. "That is always our advantage. Adaptation, creativity, courage, the ability to turn the tables on any opponent. Intelligence is useful, but only if paired with ingenuity. That is humanity's greatest weapon." As they cleared the dense fog, the stars slowly reappeared beyond the mist. Light and clarity returned to the shuttle. Frairen allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. They had faced a predator, studied it, learned its behavior, and outmaneuvered it. Humans had survived once again. Rimiki looked out at the stars. "Captain, this experience, it has changed me. I understand humans better now. You are more than brave or clever. You are persistent. You do not give up." Frairen placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "That is why we endure. That is why humanity stands out among the stars. Prey can become hunters. Hunters can become prey. But humans always adapt." The shuttle moved steadily toward the Valkyrian, leaving the neutralized Predator and the silent nebula behind. Frairen took one last look at the dark, twisted structure they had conquered. Somewhere in its silence it remembered them. It had learned from humans, and in learning it had revealed its own limits. Rimiki turned to Frairen one last time. "What will you do next?" Frairen's eyes gleamed with determination. "Next, we continue our journey. There are other mysteries out there, other threats, and wherever humans go, we will learn, we will adapt, and we will survive. That is what makes us stronger than any predator." The stars stretched ahead, endless and infinite. Humanity had faced another predator in the dark, and once again courage, ingenuity, and perseverance had turned the tables. The nebula of Soren's Veil faded behind them, silent, mysterious, and conquered. The Valkyrian glided silently through the still misty edges of Soren's Veil. Frairen stood at the bridge window, arms resting lightly on the rail. Beyond the glass, the nebula's gray clouds swirled in soft, hypnotic currents, gradually thinning as the ship moved toward open space. Rimiki stood beside him, her gaze sharp yet reflective, taking in every subtle movement in the star-strewn void. For hours they had maneuvered through the fog, evaded the predator, and finally neutralized its core. The orb now lay silent behind them, its pulse extinguished. Yet the silence of victory was not empty. It carried weight, the kind only those who had faced near-perfect intelligence and lived could understand. Rimiki broke the quiet first. "Captain, do you ever think the predator truly understood us?" Frairen's eyes did not leave the stars. Perhaps in some sense. It observed, calculated, and adapted, but humans are not predictable. That is our strength. It cannot fully comprehend instinct, courage, or ingenuity. It can learn techniques, but it cannot understand determination. She nodded slowly. "I have observed many intelligent beings, but never one like humans. You improvise. You adapt. You face fear and turn it into a weapon." Frairen finally turned to her, his expression calm but firm. "That is what makes humans stand out. Strength, intelligence, courage, and they are valuable, but adaptation is what keeps us alive. No predator, no matter how advanced, can predict everything we do. That is why humanity endures. The bridge crew remained quiet, reflecting on his words. They had all felt the tension, the creeping fear, the subtle intelligence watching their every move. But now they felt pride. They had faced a predator that was smarter than anything they had encountered, and yet they had survived. Humans had turned the tables, proving that cleverness and courage could surpass raw power. Frairen stepped forward, his hand resting on the console. We have neutralized the threat, but that is not the end. The universe is vast and danger can appear anywhere. We must continue to explore, learn, and be prepared. That is our mission. Rimiki's eyes glimmered in the dim light of the bridge. Captain, I feel changed, witnessing how you and the crew face the predator. I understand humanity better now. You do not rely solely on power or technology. You rely on thinking, courage, and instinct. That combination is rare in the universe. Frairen smiled faintly. And that is why we survive. That is why humans are remarkable. We turn challenges into lessons, threats into opportunities. That is the heart of the human spirit. Outside the ship, the nebula slowly faded behind them. Its mist and storms, once unpredictable and threatening, now lay dormant, empty of life and menace. The orb and the derelict structure were no longer a threat. Humanity had survived. Humans had outsmarted a predator designed to hunt them, and the lesson was clear. Intelligence without adaptability can be overcome no matter how advanced it seems. Rimiki moved to the sensor panel. Captain, the orb's neural systems are fully neutralized. There is no energy signature remaining. We can consider this predator permanently disabled. Frairen nodded. Good, but the lesson remains. The predator was clever, it adapted, it learned from humans, and yet it failed. That is proof that determination and adaptability matter more than raw intelligence alone. A faint beep echoed through the bridge as the crew monitored nearby systems. Debris from the nebula's interior shifted slowly in the fading mist. Remnants of old colonies and lost ships. Frairen's gaze followed them. All those vessels were lost because no one adapted. But we adapted. We survived. That is what makes humans exceptional in the galaxy. Rimiki leaned closer. And yet, Captain, the nebula still holds mysteries. Other threats could be hiding here, waiting. Frairen's expression was calm yet alert. Then we remain vigilant. Humans do not stop learning. We do not stop exploring, and we do not stop protecting what is important. The universe is endless, and every challenge is an opportunity to grow stronger. The shuttle that had carried them into the predator's lair remained docked behind them, silent and steady. Frairen glanced at it. Even our tools adapt with us. Machines are useful, but humans give them purpose. Without direction and creativity, technology alone is incomplete. Rimiki nodded slowly, her thoughts reflecting his. That is why humans endure. You combine mind, courage, and innovation. No predator can match that because no predator has all three combined in one being. Frairen's eyes turned back to the stars, and that is why humans always survive. That is why prey can become hunters. That is why hunters can become prey. But humans always adapt and endure. The crew watched in silence as the Valkyrian glided out of the nebula. For the first time, the stars returned fully, shining in endless brilliance. Frairen allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. They had faced intelligence designed to hunt, to analyze, and to kill, and yet they had prevailed. Humans had proven once again that courage and ingenuity could overcome even the most formidable predators. Rimiki looked out the viewport, her silver eyes reflecting the starlight. Captain, this experience, it has changed me. Humans are remarkable. You do not rely only on skill, strength, or tools. You rely on thinking, adaptability, and spirit. That combination is rare and dangerous to anyone who would threaten you. Frairen smiled faintly. And that is exactly what makes humanity stand out in the galaxy. Every challenge we face strengthens us, teaches us, and reminds us that we are never truly prey. We turn the tables, adapt, and endure. That is the human way. As the ship moved farther from the nebula, the fog dissipated completely. The lost vessels, the debris, and the derelict predator were left behind, frozen in silence. The universe stretched endlessly before them, full of mysteries, dangers, and opportunities, and humans, resilient and clever, were ready for whatever came next. Rimiki turned to Frairen one last time. "What will you do now?" Frairen's gaze stayed on the stars. "We continue. There are countless worlds, countless mysteries, and countless threats. And wherever humans go, we will explore, adapt, and survive. That is what makes us stronger than any predator, any challenge, any threat. That is the heart of humanity." The crew returned to their duties, their faces reflecting a mix of awe and pride. They had witnessed something extraordinary. A predator, once powerful and intelligent, defeated by human ingenuity and courage. The experience would be remembered, logged, and studied, a lesson for all explorers who followed. Frairen stood silently for a moment, then turned to Rimiki. "Remember this, Rimiki. Humans endure not because we are the strongest, but because we think, we adapt, and we never give up. That is why we survive, and why we thrive no matter what hunts us in the dark." Rimiki nodded, understanding fully now the essence of the human spirit. "I will remember, Captain. You and your people are remarkable. I understand why humans are feared, respected, and admired across the stars." Frairen smiled faintly. "And that is only the beginning. The universe is vast. Predators, challenges, and mysteries await. But humans will always endure, always adapt, always prevail." The stars stretched ahead, infinite and brilliant, as the Valkyrians sailed onward. Humanity had faced a predator designed to hunt and destroy. Humanity had turned the tables, and humanity had prevailed once again, proving that courage, ingenuity, and the refusal to yield could conquer any challenge. The nebula of Soren's veil faded completely behind them, silent, mysterious, and empty of threat, and somewhere beyond other mysteries awaited. Frairen and Rimiki side by side would face them together, confident in the truth that humans, even when seemingly prey, could become the ultimate hunters in a universe that tested every limit. As the ship jumped to warp, the bridge crew watched the stars stretch and blur into brilliant lines. The log recorded the event simply: predator neutralized. Human spirit undefeated. Mission continues. Frairen's eyes reflected the streaking stars, steady and determined. "No matter what comes next," he whispered, "humans will endure, and we will always adapt." Rimiki placed her hand lightly on the console. "And I will follow your example. Humans do not give up. Humans survive." Frairen smiled, turning his gaze forward. "Exactly. That is why we will always be stronger than any predator in the galaxy." The stars stretched endlessly before them, full of possibility, danger, and promise, and humanity, resilient and clever, continued its journey, ready for whatever awaited in the unknown depths of space.